times on this channel. They can show us a great insight into intriguing and previously unknown topics that can be a great source of information. But sometimes, certain companies, organizations, or even the government can find these documentaries to be a bit too revealing. They can go as far as to ban them from public view. So that's what we're going to be having a look at today. So here are 5 controversial documentaries that were banned. Number 1. In 1969, English director Ken Loach was commissioned to make a documentary about the charity organization known as Save the Children. The movie's purpose was to shine a light on the work that the charity did in England and Africa. It was funded on behalf of the charity itself, so it was expected that this was going to be a pretty good look for Save the Children. But this wasn't necessarily the case. When Loach arrived to one of their institutions in Kenya, he noticed a few things that didn't sit right with him. For one, the children were forbidden from speaking in their native language, and their treatment was questionable. Over in England, the staff were seen as disrespectful and condescending, and seemed to have cared very little about the children they were supposed to be saving. The documentary basically presented a narrative that wasn't in the best interest of Save the Children. Loach questioned their methods, mission, and even their core purpose, which is quite a spectacular feat when you consider that Save the Children were literally funding him to do this. The organization were not pleased and refused to pay for the movie and demanded that it be banned from public viewing. A legal battle ensued, and eventually an agreement was made where the movie would be archived by the British Film Institution but not released to the public until the charity were okay with it. That time would eventually come over 40 years later when the company decided to release it in a very limited setting. A number of universities were granted a screening, but apart from that, the film remains banned from the public. Those who have seen it say it's quite the watch, a very literal example of biting the hand that feeds you, but arguably for the right reasons. In the next few decades after this movie, Ken Loach would go on to achieve a large amount of success in the filmmaking world, and this movie remains as a very interesting footnote in his career. Number 2. In 1967, Frederick Wiseman and John Marshall created a documentary titled Tinicum Follies, which showed the lives of both patients and inmates at the Bridgewater State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. It showed the very cruel way they were treated, which included being held up in empty cells, having their hygiene neglected, and being bullied by the staff of the hospital. In the 19 days the pair spent there, they saw the reality behind this so-called hospital and were ready to expose the truth to the public. However, the government of Massachusetts had different plans. They claimed that the pair had failed to get the proper permissions necessary to release the footage, even though they asked the patients beforehand and even gotten permission from the hospital's superintendent, who at the time was technically their legal guardian. This should have been enough, but it wasn't. Harry Callis, a Superior Court judge from the state, ordered the film to be recalled and stated that all copies must be destroyed. Wiseman managed to appeal this so that the film could be shown in an educational setting. Students, doctors, lawyers, and public service members would have access to the film, but the general public would not be able to watch it. The movie was being very clearly censored. It would most likely destroy the image of the hospital and stain the reputation of the state's healthcare services in the process, which made for a dangerous movie in the eyes of the government. This ban would continue for over 2 decades until eventually, in 1991, Judge Andrew Meyer lifted the ban and allowed the movie to be released to the general public. While the documentary did make a very significant impact, that impact could have been a lot bigger if the movie was allowed to be released when it was first made. It is a very clear example of the dangers of censorship and how it can affect the real world on a large scale. Karen Carpenter story was released. Directed by Todd Haynes, the movie uses real-life footage as well as acted-out scenes that are portrayed in Barbie dolls. It is a creepy but effective technique, and the movie gained some minor success in the late 80s. However, in 1990, the movie was taken out of circulation after Haynes lost a copyright infringement lawsuit from Richard Martin, who disliked the film for the way it portrayed his passion. But this wasn't very effective. The movie was bootlegged thousands of times and even exists on YouTube today. It also gained a cult audience for its experimental nature. However, the movie has not seen any commercial circulation since 1990, meaning it hasn't been streamed or shown on TV, and technically, it is supposed to be inaccessible to the public. This has never been heavily enforced. Number 4. In 1997, director Roger Allers asked the British artist Sting to write some music for Kingdom of the Sun, an upcoming Disney movie that later became The Emperor's New Groove. He agreed to this, and part of the deal he made was that his wife and documentarian Trudy Styler would be allowed to film a documentary about the production process of the movie. As far as Disney were concerned, this was just another way to promote the movie and probably expected a light, fun documentary showing behind-the-scenes footage. However, this was not the case. Snyder showed the realities behind the production, the frustrations that the crew went through in the making, and the harsh ways they were treated. In one scene, the crew shows 2 executive producers a half-finished version of the movie, but they weren't satisfied with the product. Hundreds of hours of work was ultimately scrapped, and the crew's effort was shut down in a fashion. In another scene, Sting himself was told that the songs he has spent weeks working on were deleted from the movie. The title of the documentary was Sweatbox, a name that came from the studio that the animation crew worked in, which was a tight space with no air conditioning. Unsurprisingly, the documentary was also scrapped, adding Trudy Styler to the long list of creators who called fiction to a ruthless production process of this. Disney released a heavily edited version that was nothing like the original documentary, but for around a decade, the original was completely lost until 2012. In 1997, director David Monahan created a documentary entitled Evangelist, The Sport That Wouldn't Die, which was about the life of Michael Pike and his infamous unlicensed music. Through this, he also got a deep dive into aerial combat, a form of unarmed combat that has caused a lot of controversy throughout the years. In most areas of the Western world, sport is a movie, and is not like underground markets. This documentary attempted to shine a light on it, but failed, as the British Board of Film Classification refused to give it a certificate on 2 separate occasions, stating that the movie glamorized the sport. It is now completely banned in the UK, but much like the sport itself, the founding audience has some less connection.
Germany, Britain, France, and Japan flocked to the palace to savor the intimacy of the royals, but also to quickly discover the filth that lies behind the scenes. They've all heard of a stinky Versailles, of members of the court relieving themselves in the corners of stairwells, of a king holding audiences on his throne, a chair